Transracial families know the world is an extremely diverse place filled with all kinds of people of different colors. What's just as diverse is the right kind of skincare. There's no one-size-fits-all. In this video, we will go over some basic skincare information to ensure your Black African American or biracial child develops a healthy skincare attitude, good skincare routine, and prevents skin-related issues in their future. There are numerous soaps, creams, lotions, and other skincare products on the market. When shopping, focus on essentials. Look for natural and organic ingredients and products. These are a better choice because they are free of harmful ingredients. Now here are a few skincare basics for darker skin. For children 1 year and older, cleanse face in the morning and before bed with warm water on a non-irritating cleanser. Limit time in the shower or when bathing and make sure water is warm and not hot to avoid drying out skin. Always wash gently with fingertips or soft cloth and avoid abrasive agents such as puffs and pads. Preteens and teenagers going through puberty or children with a high level of activity may need additional cleansing during the day. If they have a tendency towards dry skin, instead of an additional bath or shower, have them wash key areas to get clean. This would be hands, underarms, and groin area. It's important to moisturize the entire body after bath or shower and give special attention to elbows, knees, and hands. Apply physical sunscreen SPF 30 or higher with zinc or titanium. For children and babies under 1 year old, wipe the face with a soft cloth morning and evening using only warm water. Babies have very little activity, so it's okay to bathe every 2 to 3 days. Moisturize the entire body after bath with special attention to elbows, knees, and hands. If the skin appears dry between bathing or has dry patches, a light application of a fragrance-free moisturizer can be applied. For children over 6 months of age, apply physical sunscreen with zinc or titanium SPF 30 or higher. Infants under 6 months should not be exposed to heavy amounts of sun without protective clothing on the extremities and head. Take your time when shopping for cleansers. Look for the gentle and sensitive or the natural and organic section of the store. Pay special attention to listed ingredients on the back of the product. Stay away from cleansers with chemicals listed in the ingredients, especially sodium lauryl sulfate. It strips the skin of its natural oil and may cause peeling. Here's a sample list of preferred ingredients to look for in face and body cleansers. Colloidal oatmeal, which hydrates, soothes, and calms the skin. Also aloe, chamomile, lemongrass, shea butter, peppermint, and lavender. People of color can tap into their heritage and use many tried and true lotions, moisturizers, and serums for the best skin softening results. Look for these natural ingredients in products. Some work best in products, while others you'll be able to use straight from the kitchen or bathroom shelf. Cocoa butter, castor oil, shea butter, almond oil, sunflower oil, vitamin E, vitamin C, and petroleum jelly. When children hit puberty, most will need deodorant. The underarm skin is extremely thin, so it's easy to irritate. It's also prone to bacteria growth because of warmth and moisture. For Black African American and biracial children, hyperpigmentation as well as eczema can become an issue. Read the label. Many deodorants include aluminum, dyes, and other chemicals you'll want to avoid. You may have to try a few before finding the right one, so don't get discouraged. Here are a few ingredients in deodorant to look for that will naturally neutralize bacteria odor while keeping skin soft. Shea butter, tea tree oil, green tea, sage, arrowroot powder, magnesium hydroxide, jojoba oil, and castor oil. Avoid deodorants with sulfates, silicones, alcohol, formaldehyde, metals such as aluminum and nickel, and unnatural fragrances.
We kind of have this thought in our mind when we have kids. We have to clean them as much as possible. The more we clean them, especially, I see it all the times when patients come in, how often should I bathe my child? They have eczema, their skin has a rash. I think the more I clean it, the better somehow this rash is going to get. The downside with that is, in fact, the more that we're washing the child, the more that they're sitting in these warm baths, that warm water is actually dilating or opening up all their pores, and it's pulling all of the moisture right out of their skin. So all that good moisture that's really helpful to keep the skin healthy, to keep the skin barrier healthy, is coming right out at that time, and it's making the eczema or the rash worse. You can bathe your child every night if it's part of a routine that's important, for what have you, bedtime or what it may be. But you don't need to use soap everywhere on their body. They don't need to be in the bathtub for 45 minutes or an hour, as much as they want to be, I'm sure. Having a 7-month-old, I know how much they enjoy it sometimes, but you have to get them moving, because it's going to just dry their skin out and make it a little bit worse. And so shorter bath times, not as hot water, moisturizing within 3 minutes of getting them out of the tub. I would say that as African Americans, we are not primarily prone to more dry skin. However, our dry skin tends to be more obvious because of the pigment and the shade that we have in our skin. When our skin becomes dry, we start to notice that fine flaking a lot easier, just because the shade that tends to appear in the dryness and the superficial layers of the skin are much more apparent. What we colloquially call ashy. Right, throughout the winter months. So for brown and darker skin, as far as moisturizing specifically, are there certain ingredients that tend to work a little bit better? The answer to that is some of the old, faithful, and traditional things that we've been using in our community for years, like cocoa butter and things of that nature. Even for me, growing up as a Jamaican, castor oil, right, is something that we used a lot traditionally on our skin from my grandmother. And those things do tend to absorb better, are much more moisturizing in the skin, and then going to give us the long-lasting moisturization that we're going to need throughout the day, because again, our skin is going to show much more evidently or much earlier on when the dryness appears, rather than our Caucasian counterparts, where it's not going to show up as quickly or as easily. So it's something that comes up all the time, as people of color, do we need sunscreen because we have so much of this lovely, beautiful, natural, right, melanin? The answer is absolutely yes. And so there are kind of two factors at play, right? Factor number one is tanning of the skin, or getting darker of the skin, which we at baseline have a little bit more melanin, kind of larger granules, so they are actually more apparent. But that's one wavelength of light that affects our ability to tan. There's a whole other wavelength of light that also damages our skin, damages the DNA within the skin. And although the melanin does give us some protection, right, it's not fully protected. We look at people like Bob Marley. He died of melanoma. So it's something that's very serious for us, that even children of color, that we as African American children need to have sunscreen on us daily. SPF 30 or higher is what we tend to recommend. And even though some of the more what we call physical sunscreens, so these are things with zinc and titanium in them, tend to give us more of a sheen, right? This kind of white ghostly appearance that we don't love, right? And it can be challenging to put on our skin. Even nowadays, they're getting better at micronizing these things and allowing them to absorb into our skin better, so they're not as evident, because we really want to stay away from our skin from some of these chemical sunscreens, and try to find things without any chemicals that are just purely based in zinc and titanium that are much safer for us in the long term. But we absolutely should be wearing sunscreen, even daily. hyperpigmentation. So it's a really broad term. It's a general term to just describe darkening of the skin. What causes hyperpigmentation? The truth is almost anything that happens to our skin can cause hyperpigmentation. When we're little children and we get cuts, right, it heals a little bit darker sometimes. Over several months, we'll look back and we'll go, oh, where did that cut go? The body will absorb it. Acne can cause hyperpigmentation. Eczema can cause hyperpigmentation. Psoriasis, anything that causes the body to either heal or have inflammation can then end up in overproduction of pigment in the skin. And it can be really challenging to treat the longer that we allow these things to go on. And so I would advise that if our child was to develop some type of cut or scar, sun protection is very important. Keeping the wound moisturized is very important. Even putting sunscreen on the area afterwards is really important to prevent or get ahead of the hyperpigmentation. And then the same thing with some of these other things like acne, eczema, psoriasis. If we notice these things appearing in our child and we notice discoloration as the end result, it's really important that you get in to see someone as soon as possible to get it treated so they don't have as much or as long-term sequelae of the hyperpigmentation. So yes, so what are keloids, right? That's a great question. So keloids themselves are just an overgrown scar. So by definition, it's a scar that grows outside of the area that was injured. So if we get a cut, the scar then grows beyond the borders of the cut that we had, right? A simple line now turns into something that's several centimeters in size. How did that happen? There's a genetic mechanism behind it that African Americans, we are higher likelihood to develop, right? Based on just purely genetics. And these things should and need to be addressed very early on because they can be unfortunately painful. They can be symptomatic, itchy. They can be disfiguring. They can have long-term psychological effects. So if we notice that our child starts to develop any type of scarring that extends beyond the area that was actually cut or had a scrape to it, that's when we need to make sure we see a dermatologist immediately because like most things, if we can treat them very early, we can improve them significantly. So diet is very important in skincare, and we are learning so much more about it right now. We're doing a lot of studies actually in the GI system to identify the links between what's going on internally and how it shows up on the skin. Specifically for our children, for instance, the big studies are surrounding what we call atopic dermatitis or eczema. These are people that are more, it starts in childhood, predisposed though to asthma, seasonal allergies, and eczema. So these three things are closely linked, all three of them. So if your child has asthma, if your child has seasonal allergies, they're more likely to have eczema. And so as far as dietary factors that go into that, we used to think that trying these massive elimination diets were helpful. And trying to avoid all dairy, avoid all milk, all products. And some of the newer data says that we're actually doing more harm than good. So there's evidence that some vitamin D supplementation may be helpful for overall healthy skin in our diet. Now, moving ahead in age, definitely, there are links between acne and our diet. So the literature is consistent. Dairy and carbs are the two things that are highly linked. And we always think, oh, it's greasy food. If I eat greasy food, it's going to make my skin have more acne or breakout. It's actually because a lot of our greasy foods are fried foods or starches, right? And so there's a lot of carbs in all of these things. And so low-fat dairy we should avoid in our teenage years because they remove the fat and put sugar into the milk, and that's why. It can flare our acne up, and then anything with a lot of carbs. So unfortunately, again, this is where we're the bad guys. So pastas, rices, potatoes, you have to just be careful. Obviously, you have to enjoy life too, but just know that these things can be associated with flare-ups in our breakouts and things of that nature. I think it's important that we understand our children tend to kind of underreport our symptoms as well. You know, we don't tend to make as big of a deal about itching or burning or pain, and we as people of color tend to not make as big of a fuss about it. You know, we have lots of literature on this that discusses the disparities in healthcare just based on that alone, right? If I don't make enough noise, then it's not necessarily taken as seriously, right? It's important that we listen to our children, even if they don't seem to make as big of a deal as we would think it would warrant being evaluated by a physician. I think it's always important that we listen, and early on in Skin of Color, we get these children seen, we get them treated. The earlier the better, because a lot of times what happens with our skin is it's not the initial rash, right? That is the problem. It's the long-term effects, the hyperpigmentation that lasts for months to years, and then we are stuck in a cycle of treating with lightening creams and things of that nature. And these things are just not, they're not appropriate for the skin unless absolutely necessary, first of all. Majority of the issue is common things that just go underdiagnosed, misdiagnosed, undertreated, mistreated, because people just don't know enough about skin of color and how to take care of it. So it's really important that our children are heard, are taken seriously, and then are taken to a professional who can really understand what it takes to take care of their skin.